as the last speaker, I try to hurry up to some extent, but firstly, before I'm starting, I really would like to announce Imran Bashir and Philip Seiss and Tessa Collier and Dave Parrish, who are very much engaged in the work around these two areas, what I will present in this particular talk. What I will talk about is two component systems, really, we have under in development at Exeter University. One is the underwater acoustic condition monitoring system, and the other part is a novel mooring tether. Starting with the acoustic monitoring system there. Why we're doing this really, it's looking in terms of the acoustic monitoring of mooring lines or power cables. So we're looking in particular in subsea components who are very difficult to assess typically. So you need divers or you need ROVs to assess them. They're not visible, of course, because they're underwater. So cost-effective condition monitoring is required to some extent here. And this, of course, needs to be reliable, so you're getting appropriate information from these systems. In a way, how we're looking into this, so we try to understand what's happening really to these components, such the moorings or the umbilical cables in terms of crack formations or fatigue loads, etc. And what we have to look in terms of the technology, so elastic waves, and looking in terms of using this acoustic emissions there. We have to identify this acoustic wave detection there with these instruments who are typically available, but we're also looking if all the instruments who are available are suitable. And then you have to look in terms of signal processing, but also in terms of signature. So you have, of course, various noise within the water, and you have to make sure that you actually identify exactly that this particular noise, what is coming from a cracking, etc., associated to one specific component. In the way we're doing this, we're using dynamic test facility down in the southwest, based in Cornwall, and we look specifically here for this bench test on mooring ropes, but we also investigated other components like the mooring mussel or the Exeter tether. The dynamic test facility enables us to do various dynamic motions or replicate dynamic motions in terms of the tension characteristics, but we also can look in terms of torsion and bending and other aspects. And we also can look in various amplitudes and frequencies. So, as you can see maybe there, so in the schematics there, on the tops there. So we have the two connection points here. We have the rope in the center there. And then for this particular test, we used 3 different hydrophones there. And what we're really looking there, of course, is where it's happening, where are the noise coming from, and can we pinpoint this particular locations, but also in terms of identifying with knowledge of the signature, what is the damage and how often this damage occurs, and when it then comes to the final failure. So initially, work has been done or needs to be done in terms to understand the signature of the systems. So we're investigating for the particular components and identifying the signature as shown here, for example. So this is the first step, understanding the signature of the component. And then at the DMARC, as shown, we implement this into this facility, and we applied different load ranges. Here, for example, from 4 to 64% minimum breaking load. And you can then see different variations in terms of amplitudes. So amplitude in terms of decibel, and also you have different kind of frequencies. What is understandable to some extent, because you're stretching this particular rope, and more stiffer it gets, more you're tensioning it, higher the frequency gets. So you get also different kind of frequencies. So you get intensity there, but also at different frequencies. And we can see particular points there, maybe not so easy to see, but we're using particular numerical simulations and models then to identify these points and calculate them and analyze them, what it means in terms of the degradation of the particular component. So at lower range initially, then we're going up here up to 72% minimum breaking load, and we can see an increase there in terms of the amplitude, also a change in the frequency, the signals becoming a bit more obvious as well. So higher damage occurs now to the component as you would expect, and again we're using it in terms of the assessment and counting these. If you go higher, then we identified some internal rope failures. So the rope was manufactured from internal core and then the outer core. And initially we see some tricks again there, and then we see the dramatic failure there at this point. And shortly after, going further into the loading, we then see also the outer failure. So from the signature right to the point of the full failure, we get an understanding. We're developing some tools there, counting these and assessing the component, what then enables us to inform in a real C condition to inform when the failure was happening. So we've done this bench testing, but we also done some field testing. I will not show this here, but we've done some field testing for this particular device. We had hydrophones in the water for more than 18 months and monitored, and were able again in a real C condition to see, with knowing of the signature, the failure modes within the components, and predicted then when the failure occurred. So this is the first part. The second part, what we're working on very much, is in terms of the mooring components there, and we're looking at the Exeter mooring tether, so a bit of a shock absorber. This kind of shock absorber for the moorings, there are now really three components available. One is from TFI, one is from C-Flex, and we at Exeter University developing another one. We have to say our one is the best, logically, but the difference between the other two, our one has no mechanical parts in there. We're using typical fiber rope structure and using an inner solid core, what is compressible, in order to achieve the properties we like to achieve there in terms for the particular performance characteristics. Why we're doing this? I think so it's well understood now that peak loadings on the moorings comes at a high cost. This is not happening maybe very often, but it happens. As a consequence, you have to design to it. Because you have to design to it, you have to over-design the whole system, and as a consequence, you will occur, or this will increase the cost. If you can reduce this peak here, then you can automatically reduce the cost in terms of the mooring, but also in terms of the connection points, O&M strategies, etc. So it's a whole chain of cost reductions there. Looking at the performance characteristics, here we see, for example, standard rope. With this mooring tether, what we developed, we can reduce actually in terms of the strain, in terms of the tension characteristics. We can design it so it will result in a load reduction. We didn't just look in one particular component, but within the group, we are looking at developing specifically for the application. So here we looked, in total actually we've had 12 different kind of prototypes, what we assessed, what we modified, and we got different kind of characteristics for each of them, of course. But the important thing is that you would like to introduce this in the early design to a specific site, so you can generate mooring tether what reduces the peak load as realistic cost. We have also generated a paper around this. It's good understanding the performance of this component, but on the other hand, of course, you're introducing something novel here into the system. You also have to understand the durability. Otherwise, if this is a failure mode, it's not really helpful. So lots of work is going on there, and Tessa Godier is doing very good work around this, but we're looking there in terms of the overload failure, the fatigue failure. We're looking also, this is for the rope itself, but we're also looking in terms of the end termination. The end termination reduces typically the minimum breaking load of a rope by roughly 50%. So it's quite important to understand this. So it's a specific work done in this field as well. We're also looking there in terms of the inner core. We used polymer core there for this specific prototypes. You have to understand the properties of these polymers you're using there, how they're behaving, the fatigue cycles, etc., compression characteristics, the hardening characteristics over time. So work has been done, and this was financed mostly through the Marinet project, done at IFAMER. And we also looked in terms of the anti-friction screen, because you have friction between the outer rope and the inner core. So you have to understand this. You have to understand what is the wear and tear conditions there. So we've done lots of work, and we have developed an anti-friction. This one is an early anti-friction screen there. What was damaged in field deployments. So from this we learned, and we developed the next anti-friction, what have shown significant improvements now. So lots of work is going on there, but also we, as just discussed there, biofouling very important. You can see what happens if you get a muscle growth within these components, in these ropes, etc. You get degradation as a consequence and early failure. So again, a good understanding of this is very important, and this is work what have we done. And we have not only done this in a bench test, but we have deployed these components in real sea conditions. So a couple of papers were produced, and I think so there is a list, and the paper is also shown there, but I'm here to answer any questions.
This production is brought to you by the University of Edinburgh.